Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment below, and make sure you hit that little bell so that you get notifications of when we go live or put up new content. And yes, you can always check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps as well. So it is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a couple of weeks since we did a live. Last week, was unable to do it. 2 previous weeks before that, I was, vacationing in Sweden. You say, Scott, who vacations in Sweden? Well, the lovely Miss Kristen has family, and they had a family reunion that they've been planning for over a year. It was the life dream of the lovely Miss Kristen to go to Sweden. So mission accomplished. Check that box. But I would definitely go back. Stockholm, very nice, amazing. The people in Sweden and Denmark, absolutely the best. The best. Had the best time that I think I've had on a vacation. And it was my first real vacation where I actually took more than that. I don't know. I guess it was 3 years. And I've had stretches where I haven't taken a real vacation in like 7 years. It was very nice. And as you may recall, we did a show on the road just about every day, almost kind of confirming my theory that if I was to stop the practice of law, I could do Crime Talk from anywhere in the world. We could make it happen. I could see it. Maybe we just do a daily show, 9 to 3 or 9 to noon every day. Maybe 9 to 1, 3 to 4 hours, probably 3. I think it would work out well. So if you may have seen the thumbnail, there's been a lot of people. Today's show is, I think Brian Kohberger is guilty. Change my mind. All right. Now you say, Scott, we know he's pled guilty, right? Why would we want to talk about this? Well, here's the deal. All right. I don't know if you've read our comments. And when we talk about Brian Kohberger pleading guilty, I don't know in the modern era, if some people didn't believe it, maybe didn't have access to the video of him pleading guilty in a court of law, the case coming to an end, him getting sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years to go in the old cell block J of the maximum correctional facility there in Idaho. Some people just don't believe it. So I get lots of comments, and a lot of them are from a lot of the same people. Some are very polite. Scott, I disagree. It's going to come out that Brian Kohberger is innocent. There are more people involved. You name it. It's all there, right? Whatever. So I thought to myself, what should we do? Now, these people, let's be clear, we're going to be treating them with respect because they have different views. Maybe I am the one that is wrong. Maybe I am the one that shouldn't believe that Brian Kohberger is guilty as a matter of law and as a matter of fact based upon his guilty plea. And I don't know, some of the comments have just been, what's the word I'm looking for? What is the word I'm looking for? They have been, some of them have been so outlandish and ridiculous that the other day I called Frank, the producer, the hardest working man in show business. I said, Frank, I need you to do a video mocking the pro-burgers out there. And, you know, you've maybe seen it, maybe you haven't, but take a look at this. Check this out. I think this sums up the way a lot of the pro-burgers are thinking. Roll it, Frank.
I read the comments. He didn't do it.
Exactly. Right. That look in his eyes. Totally misjudged.
No, I did it. I admitted to it.
Now, I know that's AI, but that AI could be pretty darn accurate. I know it. His look in the eyes. And that's what some of the comments are. I can just tell in his eyes, he didn't do it. So I thought that was funny. Some people are like, you need to put that a notice that was AI because some people could believe that. And I'm thinking to myself, do you really think somebody could believe that? Really, that it wasn't AI? But that's how some people think about it. Okay. So I said in today's show that I was going to do a call-in. We usually don't do a call-in on our regular show. We usually save that for the Patreon show that goes on after this, our live show on Tuesday nights. But we're going to do a call-in show. We've done it before. And here is the thing. Now, like I said, I get lots of comments by pro-burgers that saying he's innocent. How dare you say this? You suck. You are a crappy attorney. You wouldn't know what to do. Everybody knows Kohberger's innocent. They planted his DNA. His attorney sold him out. He had to take a plea deal because he was facing the death penalty. And so therefore he had to plead guilty. No, he didn't have to. And he doesn't have to follow his lawyer's advice. Okay. But he did. So the rules of the show tonight are, if you are a pro-burger and you think that he is innocent, you get top priority. Now, there have been several, and I won't mention names, but I've responded in comments and said, listen, if you think that Kohberger is innocent, here's my email. Send it to me why you think it is. Okay. So it's time for all the pro-burgers to put on their big boys and girls pants. Stop saying that he's innocent and we know about it, because I want to hear from the people who haven't seen all of the evidence, most of them who've never, put on a witness, prosecuted a case, defended a case, why they think they know better than obviously the prosecutors in this particular case, very experienced defense attorneys in this case that recommended that their client take the deal. Probably because they knew that when the jury heard the depravity and the brutality of the murders, that he undoubtedly would have got death. They knew it. They knew he was going to be convicted, and they knew that he was going to do it. So, as you can see along the bottom of the screen, the Crime Talk call-in number, ladies and gentlemen, 725-228-TALK, 725-228-8255. And here's the requirement. You get top priority. You can still call in, but if you're a pro-Kohberger person saying he's innocent, you're going to get top of the line. I think we can hold up to 25 calls in the queue. So you call tonight. You let me know why he is innocent. What fact is it that makes you believe that? And it's not just a hunch. It's not just a theory. It's got to be something that you can back up with proof. Okay? I hate to burst a lot of bubbles out there. I know. And there's going to be lots of channels out there doing lots of shows, I'm sure, in the future, catering to this particular person. I don't know Brian Kohberger. Don't have a dog in that fight. I was even criticized because early on, he said that Scott thought that Kohberger was innocent. Well, I gave him the presumption of innocence. And you know what changed my mind? Was that old pesky DNA. When they said they had DNA, I knew it was over. I knew it was over. And why do you say that, ladies and gentlemen? Well, Scott, I have tried lots of cases. I've tried fresh, where it's a, for example, like a sexual assault, and it's a hot sexual assault where it means they were reported immediately. I've tried cold sex assault cases where they got a CODIS hit some 20 plus years later. And what is the thing? I mean, it's ID, it's identification, right? One of the key fundamental principles of criminal law is that the government must prove that it was the defendant. Not somebody looked like the defendant, not somebody that used their identity, but it was in fact the defendant. ID is a major issue in every case. The defense attorney can do a general denial. Wasn't my client. Don't have to give an alibi. Don't have to give anything else. But you just simply say, not my client. Ladies and gentlemen, faulty ID. Can't be trusted beyond proof, beyond a reasonable doubt. Therefore, you must find my client not guilty. But when you have DNA evidence, ladies and gentlemen, and like I said, DNA has cleared my clients in the past, and it has screwed my clients in the past because generally the general public believes it. And they're going to say, well, gee, how did it get there? And in this particular case with Brian Kohberger, right? It was on the knife sheath underneath Madison Mogan. That's a problem. Okay. That is a problem. Now, for those who haven't joined us before, this is my K-bar. And when the case broke in the Brian Kohberger matter, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a big one. When they said that the murder weapon was a K-bar, I said, guess what? I've got a K-bar. I had to go into the rafters of my garage and get my Marine Corps gear that I still have, old uniforms and all the stuff that you took to the field, all that good stuff, drop it out of the rafters in the garage, go through the duffel bags. And of course, it was in the second duffel bag of all the stuff. And lo and behold, still attached to an H harness, because that's what they called them back in the day, because you put this on, you know, your H harness right there and you're out in the field, etc. It's my K-bar. Had this for 37 years, had it since the summer of 1988, right after completing Marine Corps boot camp. Okay. So I kept it all that time. I kept it all the time on active duty, all that time in the reserves, all that time going, you know, back on active duty as a judge advocate in the Marine Corps. Still had it because, you know, every Marine needs a good K-bar, right? And I managed to keep it. And guess what? I've never lost it at a crime scene. Never had my DNA on it on a crime scene. I've had it the whole time. Never lost it. And thank God, right? Whew, I kept track of my gear for the last 37 years. And my K-bar knife sheath with my DNA on it, you know, wasn't the one under Madison Mogan. It was Brian Kohberger's. Okay. Now I'm going to double check here with Frank because we've had this number up for a while. And I'm telling everybody, if you think Brian Kohberger is innocent, now is your time. Get out from behind that keyboard. Okay. You can even use an alias. Okay. The people that have repeatedly said this in the comments, I have said, I've sent them, you know, responded, open to the public. Here's an email. Send it to Frank. We'll get you, we'll hook you up. You send me what evidence you have. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you are the ones that are correct and everybody else in the world that got it wrong. And all the hundreds of years of experience that the prosecutors had, that the police investigating the case had, not only in Idaho, but Washington, the FBI, don't forget Pennsylvania, all of them, not to mention all the experienced attorneys that Kohberger had, his defense team that he had, and they said, you know what, it's in his best interest to plead guilty. So 725-228-TALK, 725-228-8255. Now is your chance, ladies and gentlemen. Set the record straight. Don't just be a keyboard warrior. Tell the world what we are missing. We need to know. Convince us right now. Wait. No, Frank just refreshed it. Nothing. Like I said, we can take up to 25 calls in our queue. So you can't say that, oh, I got a busy signal. Oh, I couldn't get through. No, not a single one. So we are waiting. Now is not the time to simply wait, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the time to let the world know what everyone has been missing. Like I said, don't just sit behind that keyboard with a faceless, undescriptive handle for your Facebook or Facebook or YouTube handle. No. Now is the time to put your money where your mouth is. State to the world what everybody else has missed and why you and only you and maybe a handful of people, but it seems like there's enough out there. Let us know what we are missing. I'm waiting. This is almost like a telethon back in the day. You know, come on, call in. Come on. If you're a pro Koberger person, now is the time to call. Explain it to us. This is your opportunity for the world to see. This will go out to the entire world. You're going to have an audience on YouTube. You're going to have an audience on Facebook. You're going to have an audience on Rumble. Who else do we send it out to, Frank? I always forget. There's so many places. X, it goes out on the radio. So all of the pro Kobergers, this is your opportunity. This is your chance to set the world straight. And let's see what you've got to say. All right. Now, we've heard some alternate theories, right? Well, Brian Koberger may have been involved in it, but there were others. Okay. Who? Now is your opportunity. Please, I'm begging you. This is going to make great entertainment. I want to hear from you. Explain it to me. How it wasn't him, how he was framed, how he was just out driving, looking at the stars on a cloudy night. Please, I beg you. This is your opportunity. I mean, I wake up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I just don't have time to look at all the comments. And I wake up in the middle of the night and I will respond because, I wake up and I can't sleep. Now I'm awake. Let's take a look. And I start responding. Oh, Scott, he's innocent. Really? And sometimes, and I look, I can hit the little thing and it'll say what the person has. And, it says, 1 subscriber. That's okay. You don't have to, you have to have an account, right, to be on YouTube. And they've posted no videos. And I just try to see what's their background. What are they saying? Who knows? Maybe they're experienced trial attorneys. I don't know. But somebody has got to come forward. All the pro Koberger people that are out there that I see on X, I see on my comments, both on Facebook and YouTube, I am giving you a platform of literally almost 800,000 people between YouTube and Facebook for you to state your case. I mean, this is your moment. And some of the people, the one person in particular that always tells me that I'm wrong, I said, hey, call in tonight. You can tell me how you did it. I don't know if they're watching. I don't know. I haven't seen any of their stuff go by, but now is your moment. Come on. You don't even have to identify yourself. Just give me your best shot and we'll see if it can stand up. Come on. Explain where Brian Koberger was between 4 and 4:25 on November 13th of 2022. Please. Do what his experienced trial counsel were unable to do. Uh-oh. Do you think it's possible? We have a caller. Are they a pro Koberger? Frank's checking it. They get this, state the little description in there. Doesn't matter, Frank. Bring it on, but have the hold button ready in case, they use profanity. Okay, we got a call coming in. Can you hardly wait? The anticipation is building.
Oh, the caller hung up.
Oh.
Okay, we got a call.
Oh, we got a call. One hung up and another one called. All right. Who do we got? Rose?
Yeah.
Rose?
No, Ophelia's Rose.
Rose, you're on the air.
I'm here. I am not a Koberger. I'm calling you because I have been following the groups and the just kind of like the general consensus going on about why people are pro-burgers. And I think, have you heard of the Brent Kopaka angle about the neighbor that lived across the street that the police took out because he had PTSD, he was on drugs, he had an obsession with knives, and how people are they're trying to tie that into Brian, saying that because they both had K-bar knives, because he was ex-military, and that the police took out Brent because he had said before they shot him that I know who killed those girls and all this. There's all these little things that people are taking it. I know and they're trying to connect this neighbor of his to why he's innocent. I don't know how they can weave that web, but people actually believe it.
It's ridiculous.
And
it's preposterous.
I know.
That's and I appreciate you calling in. It's great that you obviously been following it. It doesn't sound like you believe it. That you're not a pro Kohberger. He's an innocent guy. And here's the thing. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I think as any general member of the society would say, we certainly don't want to put people in prison for crimes that they didn't do, right? So if they're innocent, we should have resolved this. He obviously had his chance, right? I think he'd be starting his trial next week, I do believe, right? August 11th, I think was the start date for officially starting after they get the jury. So he had his moment. He was weeks away from his moment if he thought there was a viable alternative suspect. And here's the other thing. The alternate suspect that you mentioned, he wasn't even in their motion for an alternate suspect.
That's true.
So
I don't know where people pulled it out.
The defense attorneys whose job it is to argue reasonable inferences from the facts and the law, right? Or the lack thereof, couldn't even make a straight face argument, right? Oh, the guy had a K-bar. Well, guess what?
Right.
I got one too. Am I a suspect? No.
Yeah.
Why? Because guess what? Unlike Kohberger, who bought it like 9 months before, I have been able to keep mine for 37 years. In fact, I've even kept it in the Crime Talk studios for the last, 2 years, I guess, since I've been here, or since I've had it here. And yet I still haven't lost it. Funny how that works, isn't it? And
yeah, I think pro-burgers, though, you know what? There always has to be a devil's advocate, and they get more attention by saying he's innocent than by admitting he's guilty.
Well,
So,
I get it.
I
And
mean,
don't get me wrong. We've covered Brian Kohberger a lot. I mean, you can look at our page. We covered him a lot. There wasn't one guy that was more disappointed that this case was not going to trial than this guy right here. Okay. I was hoping there was going to be a trial. I was going to go out and see it, not all of it, but it was like 11 weeks. But I was going to go out there and make sure that I saw it in person, kind of get the vibe out on the ground. And yet he went and ruined it. I personally hold Brian Kohberger responsible for that. We could have had incredible views. And like I said, I had no dog in the fight, whether it's going to be good or bad for Kohberger. I think it was going to be bad because normally what you expect to happen in trial happens. And they knew it. The defense attorneys knew it. And Brian Kohberger, not some innocent 18-year-old kid who's never been through this process, right? This guy was studying to be a PhD. He understood the court system. He understood police investigations. The guy was trying to commit a perfect murder. He thought he could get away with it. He thought he was smarter than everybody else. And it turned out, like the judge said, and the family member said, the Goncalves family said, he's dumb. He's dumb.
Yeah,
he got
Olivia
caught.
said that.
So, all right.
Yeah, I know. And I've liked how you've covered this case. You've always pointed out where Ann Taylor was very strong in her defense and what kind of angles that she was using. And I appreciated you, even though, it was hard to like Ann Taylor because she's defending him. He does deserve the defense like any one of us.
Absolutely.
But I liked how you covered that side too. And I appreciate that because it helped me kind of understand more about the defense side of things.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No,
I appreciate
thank you.
everything.
I mean, That's, when we started this program years ago, that was the goal, is to be able to explain things so people learn and understand about the criminal justice process. And so people understand, right? Brian Kohberger, we now know, was, he had admitted to doing terrible things. But guess what? He's still entitled to counsel. Ann Taylor, I told you when I thought she did really good job, was good lawyering. And frankly, I'll be honest with you, those first couple of hearings when it was back in Latah County, she was kicking the butt of the prosecution. And the judge was eating out of her hand. It was like, oh man, this is going to be good. Right. And
she had me worried.
and then things started to fall apart. I've always compared the case, which is why I said early on, if I was Brian Kohberger's defense attorneys, I would be there having this conversation and say, you need to tell me what the hell there is. Because guess what? We've only got one shot at this, and we need to go within speedy trial. Clearly, we won't be able to do this, but we'll just throw it out there and see what it comes up from it, right? And remember they said, we're going to trial. We demand speedy trial. And then they're like, okay, we waive speedy trial. And I have won 9 not guilties. Walk them out of the courthouse on homicide trials. Okay. 9 in 30 years. That's a pretty good record. I've known attorneys that some have never tried a homicide case and been criminal defense attorneys. And some have never won a homicide case. They're tough. Okay. But what I've said, the common denominator of all of those were, 1, the defendant kept their mouth shut. 2, we went to trial without asking for any continuances, because the government is like one of those big old steamrollers, that they use to flatten all that hot asphalt. You ever watch one of those get rolling? Yeah. It's kind of slow. Right? But once that thing gets rolling and it starts going down a hill, you don't want to stop in front of it, right? Once the government machine is rolling against you, it's going to be like one of those cartoons and you're going to be laid out flat. And I said the only shot they have at this point is they need to go speedy trial, get it within 6 months. Because you really think the prosecution would have had all their ducks in a row in that 6-month period? No way. No way. They were still doing all that testing. And if it wasn't tested in time within, 35, 45 days of trial, everybody makes such a big deal about, mitigation and all that stuff. I mean, I've only done one death penalty case, and the mitigation was pretty compelling. And they ultimately took the death penalty off the table. And now we don't even have the death penalty. But the here in Colorado, I should clarify that. But really what it was, just telling the story. I mean, I made several trips, but that was mostly just trying to, I had to go to Kansas City and Arkansas to talk to, family members, but it was just telling the story. And, the prosecutor's always like, normally we get like a old picture of the defendant and a letter from his mom saying, don't kill my baby. And we did something unique and different was we did interviews and videotaped it. And we put this video together and showed it to the DA. And he was like, I've never seen that. And that was really good because I got to see who would have been coming in trying to save your client's life. And I believe that a jury would vote for life in that particular case. And they took the death penalty off the table. Now we still went to trial and crashed and burned rather quickly, but we were doing what we were supposed to do. So like I said, Ann Taylor, she was kicking butt in the beginning, and then the evidence kept coming. It kept coming, and they kept looking at it like, oh, this isn't getting good. And they said, take the deal. And he did.
I couldn't believe when I heard he did. And I have one last question for you about this case, because in Idaho, there is no, like a lot of states have that, he could make money off of selling his story, writing his story. He can make royalties off of that. Now, since this, he's been convicted, sentenced, is it possible that the victims' families can bring, would that be a civil type of case? Would that be allowed that they could block him from getting profits off of the crime?
Yeah, I don't know what the statute of limitations is for a wrongful death case in Idaho. Normally it's only a couple of years, and the estate has to bring those cases. and they could file one if assuming what's in the statute of limitations, probably get a default judgment against them, get, millions of dollars in for a judgment awarded, which is worth the piece of paper it's written on. But yeah, if you ever did get a judgment or, did get a check, a royalty check for his telling his story or something along those lines, then yes, they could try to, garnish those
Bypass
proceeds
that,
attached to them. The Idaho, as I understand, does not have the Son of Sam laws, which basically says you can't do that. So, pretty unlikely. There's always somebody that would be willing to pay, to have him do his story. But the fact that they would have to pay him for it, already reduces some of it. If Brian Koberger was a real man, what he would do would be like, I did it. This is what I did. He couldn't even bring himself to say, I'm sorry in court. And as I've always said, one of the 12 undeniable truths of life is you can't imagine how far the words I'm sorry can go. And he couldn't even say anything. Now, normally you get to a sentencing, listen, and your client pleads guilty. By the time you get to sentencing, it's over, right? And if there's going to be, any range that the court consider, obviously in his case, it didn't matter. It was set, life without parole ×4. But the reality of it is you got to own what you did. And, that's the first step to acceptance of responsibility, right? Is, a rehabilitation is acceptance of responsibility. And judges like to hear that. They like to hear the words, I'm sorry, a little empathy, all those types of things. And he couldn't even muster up, hey, I just want to say I'm sorry for my actions. And, and maybe he did that because he knew or he heard the pro-burgers would be like, he didn't say a word, right? Normally when the defendant stands silent, there's going to be an appeal. But there's nothing to appeal in the Kohberger case. He pled guilty. So thanks for your call.
Yeah,
we have another call coming in, and
Thank
maybe
you so much.
it's a pro-burger that's going to convince me I'm wrong. Thanks for the call, Rose.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Who do we got? Brooke? Brooke, you're on the air.
Wow, fantastic. Hi, I actually used to have a call-in radio show, so I know what it's like to want to have somebody come up on the line so that you have something to discuss.
Well, I've never been accused of being shy or unable to talk for hours at a time uninterrupted. So but I appreciate it. Thanks for calling. Now tell me,
I'm guilty of the same. You know what? I'd love to give you that, and I almost want to play devil's advocate and just pretend that I am, but I just can't bring myself to that level of stupidity.
Yeah, no,
but I
need somebody
I do
that truly believes he's innocent. They looked at him in his eyes.
I have stories, though. I do. I'm going to reference a couple of things of people who kind of are on that side of the fence. One being Candace Owens. Not that she thinks he's innocent, but I did see her post something on X where she was believing that he had to have had help. And I can't with, it's like, well, if she put in as much research into this as the, Queen of France over there being a man,
Prime Minister's wife.
She would see how ridiculous that was. A lot of people will argue that how could he have taken Ethan out? And I saw a lot of pro-burgers that jumped in on her thread when she made the comment about thinking that, he had to have had help. And a lot of the people who were chiming in on that were pro-burgers were thinking that Ethan really posed a unique challenge. And all you'd have to do is have followed this case to see it. It really appeared that he was drunk, passed out, and possibly never even got up out of bed. It seems that he was fatally
asleep.
stabbed, I believe, while he was unconscious. So making the whole scenario a little easier. But I do have a way that I can kind of tie up why I believe the way I believe that they got the right guy right out the gate. And it's very simple. It's something that I'm surprised more people don't look at this and consider this. And I'll bring back another friend that I have who actually runs a crime scanner, one of those police scanner pages that's very viral actually on Facebook. She was coming at me with saying that she thought, hey, things are not always as they seem. Maybe he's the wrong guy. Maybe there was a group of people, and, she had all these crazy theories. And, she threw back in my face, well, and I'm going to admit that I question the Richard Allen case, Delphi. I question the Richard Allen case. Yeah, and I still do, and I will make a comparison because it helped actually get her to stop and consider this. And I think I've changed her mind on this based on what I'm about to say. So she's asking me, why do you think that Richard Allen could have been framed, but you don't think that Brian Kohberger was framed? And I said to her, because she understands how the local police work and whatnot, and I said, both of these cases, you had a small local police department. And in the difference between the two, though, straight out the gate, in Moscow, they set their egos aside. Kudos to the Moscow Police Department. And the governor of Idaho allotted, I believe, $1 million to bring in, I want to say, 50 FBI agents right away to work on this case, realizing the magnitude of the severity of a case like this, and brought in this huge force of the FBI, whereas in Delphi, in complete contrast to that, I believe they chased off the one FBI agent who was leaning more towards, this looks kind of cultish. This doesn't pass the smell test. We want to kind of go down that road and look into this. And the local police, poo-pooed that and decided not to work with the FBI. So I explained to my friend, I believe that the local police have jurisdiction whether they want to work with the FBI on a case or not. And in Idaho, you had like I said, the police department saying, bring it on. You have the governor, kudos to him, allotting the money to do that. So if somebody thinks that Kohberger was framed and it's because the cops were crooked, well, you're also having them to believe that 50 FBI agents were able to be, look the other way and be paid off or something to frame this guy. Like, what kind of importance does this guy have that would make 50 FBI agents working with the police say, we're going to just go ahead and go with this guy?
No,
So I'm giving kudos to the amount of effort and manpower that went into this case to bring it home, and applauding that. If everything was done like that, I mean, I don't know that everybody has $1 million to throw out to bring in 50 FBI agents, but it did the trick.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly helped. I think the distinguishing thing for Richard Allen, and I had when they filed their motions, basically saying to place this, they would take, this, and then they would have to do this all single-handedly. We read those motions on I think it was a live one night, and like, I like it. I like their argument. It's good lawyering. That's what it was. It was really good lawyering. But as time went on, there were admissions, right, that he had done. Richard Allen had, and that carries a lot of weight. And you can say, the stresses of everything, made him do it. Yeah, I don't buy that. I've been doing this for 30 years as a criminal defense attorney, and juries believe people when they confess, because guess what? People don't usually confess to things they didn't do. Now, have people done that? Yes, but usually it was before, I'd say, everything was recorded on videotape, when they could take you down to the basement of the police department and, beat you with a rubber hose and things like that. And, nobody wants anybody to be wrongfully convicted of a crime or falsely accused of a crime. Heck, I've hired experts to look into false confession type cases. And unfortunately, even my experts are like, yeah, I can't help you on this one. So it's pretty rare. So, that's the number one thing. And jurors look at it, and, jurors may not be all, into true crime and look at every case, but the reality of it is, just like DNA, people look at it like, wow, that's DNA. You got to explain why it's there. Also, why are you admitting to something you didn't do?
Now, I'll say that if I had no prior, information, having watched anything about the case, and I went in just blind as a juror, I think I would, listening to confessions or just knowing that the person confessed, I probably would rather err on the side of not making the mistake of putting somebody back out into the public that could do something so heinous. So I see that. But I will say what I think is unique about Richard Allen's confessions, for anyone who followed the case intensely, and I'm sure you did, was how they were coming back saying that when he said these things, he had been put under all kinds of different psych medications and was being denied being able to see his wife and has this huge codependency thing going on with her, and that he was asking his lawyers, is she okay? Is she okay? And then saying he was being threatened by the prison guards. Well, all this was sounding just too fantastic to believe, right? And then you're watching someone like, if I can say another person, Vinnie Politan, I remember his face when they found out that there really were prison guards working there that honestly really were wearing these odor mist patches. That's what got me twisted around and following the case, was at that point, or up until then, I'm thinking, well, this all just sounds really preposterous. And then it was like, well, hold on. They really were wearing these patches, and then the one guy goes out after they tell him that they can't and has the things tattooed on his face. That seemed so over the top that I started really paying a lot of attention to the case from that point forward. And because the case always really honestly gave me the creeps. And that's what kind of pulled me in thinking, this guy may not be the one who did it. I mean, I guess there were other people who made some confessions that weren't in jail under duress and under psych medication. They're saying that once he sobered up from the psych medication, that even if you listen to those confessions, his wife is like, what are you talking about? Like, you didn't do this. And he even comes back and says things like, maybe I did. He's not really fully committed, even when you're listening to the confessions.
I get it. But, generally people don't do that. When I do voir dire, which I'll be doing again next week in a homicide trial, one of the things I ask people, because I want them to go along with it, I ask them, would you plead guilty to something you didn't do? And I'm like, we're not talking about a traffic speeding ticket and they're going to offer you a 2-point, defective headlamp or something like that. I'm talking about you are accused of a crime and you didn't do it. Would you plead guilty to something you didn't do? And everybody says, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Of course not.
And
I would say that as well. But I also know that from having a pretty crazy life, where there's things where you can be pushed to the edge and you can't, things may not be as they seem. And I say that from the things I've been through. I was evacuated from my city burning to the ground. So, I have seen things where people did things that didn't make sense. There was a man who ran back into his burning house and died with people trying to pull him back out. Sometimes, and under any normal circumstances, of course, nobody's going to admit to that. But factor in the psych medication. And factor in being held in isolation for 14 months.
Yeah. And I understand that. And I've had clients that have been incompetent. I've had clients that have been insane, like, literally, legally insane. And I get that. And each case is different. And I also understand that. And I have said,
real quick,
in this job,
talking about insane, I believe he was also at that point eating his own feces, if I may say that. Wasn't that the case during that period of time when he was making the confessions? I believe he was actually also eating his own feces. Yeah. So I could see that as being in an insane state of mind.
But then his attorneys should have raised competency. And as I recall, they never did.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
If I have a client that's eating his own feces, and I've raised competency. Okay. So and don't get me wrong, I have had some crazy cases in my life where I was just like, really? Like that happened? Really? Right. And we start investigating it. It's like, wow, it really turned out that way, but I could prove it. Okay. And that's the thing that I think most people, wrap their head around, that it screws everything up, which is, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you believe. When it comes to court, you have to be able to prove it with legal and competent evidence. And even then, the other side's going to counter it with what they've got. And so it's ultimately for the jury to decide. And so, I get it. Each case is innocent, but, is different. But in Richard Allen's case, I mean, I was like, let's give the guy the presumption of innocence. And then as time went on, I'm like, oh, I can explain away that gun. It's a generally manufactured gun, not a big deal, right? But it just happened to be in his house. Oops, right? It's always those little things. Somebody forgot to get rid of something. But as time went on, like I said, the repeated situations where he kept saying he did it, I think that's what did it for the jury. Because as a general rule, and you can explain, and guess what? The jury got that in that particular case. They got that information, and guess what? They still found him guilty.
Yeah, well, that will be the one that I still kind of question. There's just something that pulls on my heartstrings with that case. And I'm not saying, are there cases where the jury gets it wrong? And when you had Judge Gull that was just denying every motion that the defense came up with.
Well, it didn't seem like. Welcome to the practice of law. Welcome. I've seen lots of that. Well, the judge denied every motion the defense filed. Welcome to my world. Okay. I have a question. I swear to God, I did this is probably one of my first videos. I'd have to go way back and look at it, but it was a client that I did a homicide trial for. And I brought him in and we talked to him about the experience. He has since passed away, but he was like, yeah, I wanted to get myself a new attorney because I paid Scott all this money and everything kept he couldn't get a single motion granted his way. Well, guess what? Judge denied every motion, denied most of my objections at trial, and we still found, jury still found him not guilty. And so welcome to the practice of law, and a lot of times you file motions to protect yourself, protect the client, protect the record, and you're not going to win. Okay. Ann Taylor knew she wasn't going to win a single one of those motions on the genetic DNA. She had nothing to go on. It was a Hail Mary. No way it was going to happen.
Right.
So, hey, I think we've got a call. Is it a Kohberger, Frank? Hold on.
Probably. I don't know.
I don't know. Frank's thinking it's a Kohberger, but call back again, please. Your great call.
Go get the Kohberger. Go get him.
All right, this is it. Ta-lump, 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 ta-lump. Who do we have, Frank? Hello?
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey, Scott. This is Ian calling in, and I just want to say I love your channel, and thank you so much for the chance to call in and discuss this topic.
All right. Are you a Kohberger's innocent?
Let's go with that. But really, I'm just, hoping to represent maybe some of those people who have been claiming that out there and kind of trying to ask some pointed questions to get the discussion going, if you're all right with that.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I've been waiting for this. Tell me, let's talk about why you think Brian Kohberger is innocent, completely disregarding his guilty plea. Now, hold on. Before we get started, Frank, run the AI thing again, the little thing. Okay. All right, Ian. So hold on a second. Here we go.
Go
I
ahead.
don't care what the media says. I read the comments. He didn't do it.
Exactly. That look in his eyes. Totally misjudged.
No, I did it. I admitted to it.
Okay. You got to admit that's kind of funny. Do you not, Ian?
I love it. But
all right.
Unfortunately, I guess I have more questions than answers for you
Okay.
today. I guess my first question is, are we discussing whether we think he was really the perpetrator or whether he would be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law? That's really a kind of important distinction, right?
Well, obviously, there's people that say that he has basically pled guilty against his will. Somehow he was forced. His attorneys forced him to do that, even though the judge engaged in that colloquy and asked him, are you doing this of your own free will? Are you satisfied with your attorneys? You understand we got this cool trial coming up and you're going to get to exercise those cool constitutional rights of having a jury come in, hear the evidence, holding the government to their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, making the government call witnesses where you get to confront and cross-examine all those witnesses through the assistance of your attorney as well. You have a right to present a defense, even though you never have to. And if you chose to testify, or you'd have a right to do so, even if your attorneys advised you not to. And if you chose not to testify, the jury would be instructed that they could not use your silence against you. And if you went to trial and you were still convicted and you still said, I'm innocent, and you think the judge made a legal error that resulted in an unfair trial, you'd have a right to go to a higher court to see if there was a legal error that was made and resulted in an unfair trial. And therefore, you could possibly get yourself a new trial to prove your innocence. Are you sure, Mr. Kohberger, you want to give up all those cool and amazing rights? And Kohberger said yes. And then the judge asked him, are you guilty as to Madison Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, and so on, and Ethan, and all 4 times 4 plus the burglary? And he admitted to it. So it's not really a question of, is it proof beyond a reasonable doubt? I mean, he's obviously waived that. And the only way we would ever know if the government could have proven their burden beyond a reasonable doubt is if they had gone to trial and the defense chose not to. Why? Because they thought they were going to lose. When I go to a client and say, here's the facts of the case, here's what you're charged with, here's the possible penalties, these are the defenses we might have, I literally tell them, you've read the discovery, you've seen everything in this case. What do you think a jury's going to think? And they're like, oh yeah, they're going to find me guilty. You're right. I'll go to trial. I've done some pretty bad trials where I didn't have a whole lot of good facts, and I will go sit in there for the week and I will take one for the team. Okay. But it was his decision. Does that answer that question?
Right. I think that answers that. But I mean, we're in agreement. If there wasn't enough evidence to convict him, then now we can talk about that. But if there wasn't enough evidence to convict, he would have to be considered innocent. He'd be found not guilty. Is another way of saying it.
But what evidence?
In a lawful sense.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, we can sit here and say, what if all day long, right? If frogs had wings, right, their butts wouldn't hit the ground when they jumped, right? Yeah. What if? Well, okay, the only way to find that out would have been had he gone to trial.
Yeah.
Had he gone to trial?
Well, I'll admit I'm not really a pro-burger, but when I hear that people are out there saying something contrary, and I want to hear what they have to say. So it was a matter of time before I encountered some of what these people were saying. And one thing that I found that kind of caught my attention, and I wanted to ask you about it, was investigative genetic genealogy mentioned in the probable cause affidavit that was used to make the initial arrest of Kohberger and find more evidence? Because we've heard this term thrown around, the fruit of the poisonous tree. So how did they really locate him? And was the genetic genealogy mentioned in the probable cause affidavit?
Let me see if I can pull that up. I was in the infamous Crime Talk studios this weekend, and I actually took a picture of it because I literally had a stack this high of all the filings in Kohberger, and I threw them away. But my recollection was
that reminds me so much that's just like they demolished the crime scene. So it seems like you kind of demolished some of your own paperwork as well there.
I did. I deleted it, and I figured, well, if I need it, I can always find it again on the internet since I already had it, and I saved most of it as well. But let me see if I can pull it up. I believe that it was. Mentioned in there because that was how they established the genetic tie that it was related to him, and then they obviously got the arrest warrant and then had them do it. So let me pull it up here and see if they've got the affidavit up here handy really fast. Because
while you're pulling that up, I just want to mention, when we're discussing true crime, for me, I mean, certain cases interest me, some do not. And, this is one of the one that pulled a lot of intrigue, I guess.
Yeah.
And sometimes the level of brutality of the crimes is comparable in these cases, but it's when aspects of psychology and law interact that pose major questions. That's when we really get interested. And I think this is one of those instances. Now, I understood a lot of this. I found the channel Harsh Reality on YouTube. So that's kind of one of the channels that seems to kind of bring up a lot of the more interesting questions, or maybe aspects of the investigation were not handled perfectly. That's for, whoever wants to claim that. But I guess the main question is, would the genetic genealogy be considered the fruit of the poisonous tree?
No, because it had to have been obtained illegally. And the court ruled that it was not obtained illegally because he had no expectation of privacy. And they pulled their best shot, basically saying it violated the policy of the FBI to not go in to that various databases. And they did that. And it came back to, it was somebody that was related to Kohberger's dad, I think was ultimately what it came down to. Look at the affidavit here. We're talking about cell phones, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see here.
Well, I guess that would make sense. If it's in there, then that's totally fine. But if it wasn't used in the probable cause affidavit, would that raise major questions?
No, particularly if they didn't know that all at the time. I'm looking at it. So a general search warrant was issued to current prospective location of the pen registers. Let's see. Let me get back to this here. Most of this is, I'm working on the fly here, pulling this up. But I believe most of it was based upon the cell phone data and the car description early on. And that was my first thought. Well, that's not going to, unless they can prove that's his car. But if I remember correctly, they arrested him. They got the genetic genealogy. They thought they had their guy. Then they went back and got a court order for his DNA so that they could compare that to the sample on the K-bar knife sheath button. And in that particular case, that's when they got it. So it's one of those things that wasn't there at the time. Obviously, if they did have it, it was exculpatory. But I don't see that in the actual affidavit here. If somebody knows off the top of their head, but I don't see it. It gives them the facts of it. Why to launch it? Most of it has to do with the car, and not. I don't see anything.
Right. And had you actually looked at those videos? I don't have direct access or anything. Just kind of what people put out there, put on YouTube. But if you really watch those videos, it doesn't really clearly show the car. So my question is, did the FBI have something that they're not sharing with us, that they know they have further information? Are they using the
here it is,
deep glow in the dark type of databases to find information about that? And would that be a violation of all of our constitutional rights? Because that's really, someone who commits a heinous crime like this, they deserve to be in prison. But
sure,
if you can't find that sufficient evidence without violating constitutional rights of citizens.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing.
That's really the more important part.
All right, so I found it. It was page 18 of the affidavit for arrest warrant. On December 27th, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohberger family residence located in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. The evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28th, 2022, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male not being excluded as the biological father of the suspect profile at 99.99998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father because it was the dad's. based upon this information, requesting a warrant for his arrest. And they did that. Then when they got back, they do here what we call 41-1, where they say, give us your DNA. They test it, they compared it, and obviously it was a complete match. Now, here's the other thing which you have to remember is when you send your DNA off into the world to be tested because you want to find out your genetic genealogy, which is all good. Guess what? You got to read the fine print on those companies. And I think a couple of them have since gone out of business. And people were trying to get, I think it was 23andMe, but don't hold me to that one. I think it was 23andMe. They were trying to, they said they would never, sell your data, what have you. But then they're like, well, that's really all the company is worth is the data. So they were trying to sell that. Well, when you put that out there, you're trusting the company is going to do something with it. Me, I don't think I would ever send my DNA off to all that genetic genealogy. And I've known of circumstances where people, they found relatives and family and good on them. But, you don't know what somebody's going to do with it. And, but there's no expectation of privacy. Remember, for there to be a violation, there has to be government action, right? It wasn't an unauthorized search and seizure by the government. The company gave it up and said, yeah, you can use it. And during those the motions hearings that litigated all the genetic genealogy, what you have to remember is that the defense even acknowledged that this form of protection has never been acknowledged. And Judge Hippler was like, hey, I get it. You're doing your lawyer stuff. You're doing a great job. You're making a great argument, but you're asking me to create a right of privacy that simply doesn't exist, right? The judge even noted, I see you guys didn't challenge the DNA found on the knife sheath. Well, why? It was found at the crime scene. Obviously, if it was found in his, studio or his apartment back in Pullman, Washington, there would have been a search warrant. They found it. They could have challenged the search warrant, right? Because you have the government action. But at the crime scene, he had abandoned that property. Once you abandon your property, you have no expectation of privacy in it. Okay. I had a guy once, client, being, walking rather quickly as the police are following him. Maybe he had some, narcotics and a firearm in the back of the bag, and they're getting closer and they're getting closer. And he takes the bag and he throws it into the woods or the path. And the police see it. They find it. They find the drugs. They find the gun. And guess what they also find? His wallet. You try to argue.
That's rather unfortunate.
you try to find, you say the police, those dirty, rotten scoundrels, they went into that bag and found it, and there's drugs in there, and I have to claim ownership because it's my client's, and his license in there, and they unlawfully searched it. And they're like, no, Mr. Reich, you should go back to your, constitutional law class or your criminal evidence procedure class to know that your client had abandoned his property. And you think, well, I know he abandoned his property, Your Honor, but I'm just making the record. I got to file something for my client here. I got nothing. And the offer sucks. It's guns and drugs. He's going to prison. Let's tee it up. Right. So they got no expectation of privacy. So it was abandoned. So there were no great issues that I thought that like, oh, wow, this is going to be great on appeal. There were a couple of like, they're setting it up for an appeal, but I just didn't see the Idaho courts, nor did I see Judge Hippler expanding that expectation of privacy to genetic genealogy DNA databases because they're private companies. And just because the FBI had a policy against it, hey, it's our general policy. We won't go into that. Okay, but they did. Policies are policy. Policy is a guideline. It's not a law. It's not a rule. Hell, I talked about it in my day in court. I got a statute that says cops need to turn on their body-worn camera. If not, there's a presumption of, some sort of misconduct taking place. But it's a rebuttable presumption. Well, the misconduct is they didn't turn on their body-worn camera, And so therefore you should infer that that's it. And the judge's like, well, there's other camera. You really can't see anything. And the elbow was up and you couldn't see anything, but I don't find there's any misconduct. And you're like, Judge, no, the misconduct is the fact that they didn't turn on it. And he just said, yeah, I didn't turn it on. Why? I didn't want to. I mean, so that's the law and people don't follow it. A policy, they're going to shrug your shoulders. Sorry, whatever. So
what kind of view do you think the public would have of, the use of genetic genealogy if it weren't accompanied by, someone who's been painted as quite a villain like Brian Koberger? Because, I mean, in some sense, you could say that the Dateline acted as kind of an arm of the prosecution to assert his guilt before the trial occurred. Or, I mean, didn't Idaho kind of rush to have their firing squad or their death penalty, their means in which they apply the death penalty up to date in ahead of this? And so does that say anything about the presumption of innocence in this case? If the state is rushing ahead to prepare to put somebody to death before their trial or before they pleaded guilty?
No, I mean, technically the legislature did it correctly, right? They were worried about delays with, the availability of drugs for lethal injection. And the legislature said, you know what, we're going to solve that problem. And they're not the only state that has it. I think Utah still has the firing squad. And I think maybe one or two others, they give you that option, so to speak. And so they did that. Now, had Brian Kohberger been convicted and said, oh, now he's been convicted, let's go back and change the law where it's a firing squad effective, the day before Brian Kohberger got convicted, right? Well, that'd be an ex post facto type of law that would be illegal per se, and it wouldn't apply to Brian Kohberger. But in this particular case, they're like, you know what, God, we've had a lot of people getting killed out here in Idaho lately and getting the death penalty. And we want to make sure they honor it. We don't have to wait on drugs coming through. I don't think that is any particular way. And if the prosecution was found to be the leaker of the information to Dateline NBC, whoever did that should be held accountable, should be held in contempt of court. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I mean, that was what the purpose of the gag order was for, was to, not to potentially taint the jury. But, and here's the funny thing is when you look at what we knew pretty much everything. There's going to be some things here and there, a couple revelations of, they were stabbed 52 times. I think it was Kaylee Goncalves or Madison Mogan that was stabbed some 52 times. Ethan Chapin was asleep. Well, we kind of heard that. We heard it was brutal. We heard it was bloody. It was a bloody mess, right? There were pictures of blood seeping out between the cement structure at the base of the home. Remember those photos early on? I mean, that's bad. Obviously, a lot of blood. Have you ever seen a bloody crime scene? I mean, you see it on TV, but until you actually see it, I mean, it's disturbing. And it, somebody getting stabbed, somebody getting shot, it's usually like a little, it looks like a little burn mark and maybe it comes out the back. It looks almost innocuous. Like, gee, I bet that hurt for just a second, right? But stabbing, that's personal. That's like choking somebody to death. That is freaking personal. And to do one and then two and then three and then somebody else in their sleep, that is just the epitome of depravity through and through. And the defense knew it. Brian Kohberger knew it. The prosecutors knew it. And the prosecutors showed a little grace to him because he got life without parole. All right, I got to run. We've got another call. Appreciate the call. Great call.
All right. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I loved the experience of calling in and I enjoy your show very much.
Call in anytime. We're probably do this on a more regular basis. All right, Frank, who do we have? Is this a pro Kohberger person? Not sure. All right. Frank, the hardest working man in show business, working behind the scene.
Hi there.
Hello, who do we have?
Hi, Scott.
Hi, who's this?
How are you? This is Nellie Olson from Little House on the Prairie.
You're gonna have to
How are
talk,
you?
you're gonna have to good. You're gonna have to slow down just a little bit. Take a deep breath.
Oh, sorry, I'm nervous.
Yeah, you're doing fine. Take a deep breath.
Okay.
Relax.
Well, okay.
We'll have a
first off,
conversation.
I just want to be okay. I'm not a Kohberger. I know that's what you want, so I don't want to disappoint you. But I do understand why people are like, in comparison to Watts, they seem very suspicious about the narrative and how this all went down and how it went down so quickly and the prosecution. So a couple of examples.
Well, let me just stop you there. Let me just stop you
Yeah,
there.
go ahead.
This case goes back to November of 2022, and it was resolved in July of 2025. Tell me how almost 3 years, 2.5 years, this went down quickly.
Well, it did seem like they were gearing up for a trial, and even the families were blindsided, especially Goncalves. Like, they were like, what the actual F is happening here?
Oh, you're talking
Like,
about
they
the
were getting
guilty
ready
plea.
for a trial.
You're talking about the guilty
Well,
plea.
Yes, the guilty plea.
Okay. All right. So it went down
So,
quickly. I
here's-
understand.
Okay.
Okay. I was surprised. I was a little disappointed.
So yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize. Please
I
continue.
was disappointed. I wanted a trial as well,
Yeah, so did I.
but that's not always the way things
And
work
I felt
out.
like it just seems like if there was a trial, then I mean, there's always going to be people who are contrarians. There's always going to be people who think it's a conspiracy. It doesn't matter if there's a trial or not. But it just seems to me like just close the books on this so quickly. I know it happened in 2022, but it did seem like they closed the books very quickly towards the end when everyone was just kind of like chomping at the bit for the trial. They
Okay.
wanted to really see Brian in court and all that.
Let-
and it just
let-
kind of was a big
let me-
letdown.
Let me explain something to you. I have done guilty pleas on the morning of trial. Even though we thought we were going to trial, something last minute came up. Client got cold feet. Maybe a prosecutor witness maybe wasn't going to be available. They changed the offer. And we had to go talk the judge into taking the deal. Because he's like, no, I don't. Once we set cases for trial, we're going to trial. There's a cutoff date. There wasn't a plea before that date, and we're not going to do it. There's judges that do that. But this is not unusual, okay? And, you know, it came right about the time that I would kind of expect it would, right? I mean, obviously, they've been working this case. They've been working this case for 2.5 years, the prosecutors have. So has the defense. The defense moved for that motion to continue, saying, Judge, we got that stuff. We got that stuff to do, Your Honor. It's really important stuff. And the judge says, oh, okay, that's fine, but you're going to have to tell me, even if it's ex parte sealed, you're going to have to tell me what stuff that is. And the defense was like, well, it's alternate suspect, Your Honor. So he ruled on the alternate suspect and he said no. And it's kind of like, you know, when you're in college and you're dating, you're like, hey, would you like to go out Saturday and maybe get a bite to eat? Maybe go to a movie? And the woman is like, well, you know, I got that thing going on. You know, it's a real important thing. Had that thing planned for a really long time. There was no thing. They just didn't want to go.
Right,
Okay?
it was a bluff.
And the defense didn't want to go. And when they caught, the judge called their bluff, they're like, all right, now it got real. Okay. And so decisions had to be made and things get real. Okay. I start a homicide trial on Monday. One of the attorneys in my office, she's kind of the lead counsel on this one because it was her case, but I'm jumping on it with her. And here we are, a week before trial, and the prosecution and defense are still going back and forth. Okay. And let's see, that trial starts, today's Tuesday. It starts on the 11th. So I got what, 6 days left. And I mean this with all sincerity. 6 days in the criminal defense world, that's an eternity. That's an eternity. So much stuff can happen over 6 days. You wouldn't believe it. And I'm not saying there's going to be a deal. My client's pretty adamant. We got to, it's a self-defense claim. We'll see what happens. But if we got to go try it, we're ready to go try it. But, when a client's looking at spending the rest of their life in prison and maybe they offer you light at the end of the tunnel, who knows, right?
But this was the light for him. This is what he wanted all along.
But remember, there were lots of people, there were lots of kids, there were juveniles charged as an adult that got life without parole for killing somebody when they were 16, 17 years old. Then the United States Supreme Court said juvenile life without parole, it's unconstitutional. They got to basically have to be paroled after 40 years. So, and sometimes you explain to clients, listen, man, I'm telling you, this number 48, 60, it seems like a big number, but it is light at the end of the tunnel versus no light ever.
Okay.
And I'll do whatever you want to do. But guess what? Societal standards may change, right? Just like the juvenile life without parole thing. Maybe they'll change it. Maybe, life without parole, they say, maybe that's just too long a time. We did that back in the day. Most life sentences in the early 70s was like 40 years. And people would get out if they, lived that long, or if they were paroled early. It wasn't until most people don't realize this. It wasn't until the death penalty lawyers started saying, listen, save my client's life, give him life without parole, at least he lives. Most states didn't have life without parole until the 70s. And that was really at the behest of the criminal defense bar that did death penalty cases, saying, save my client's life. He'll do life without parole. Then the legislators went and changed life without parole. You can go check it out. But none of that, a lot of that never existed.
Young man. He was arrested at 28, and that's a long time,
Yeah. If you look up, I think the average life expectancy for somebody that goes to prison,
he said 52, right?
yeah, it's not very long. I mean, I think, I got a client on a homicide. He's 67 right now. So, anything more than maybe a criminally negligent or something is, it's a death sentence. It's a life sentence.
Okay, so let me run this by. I mean, there's a few, I know you have other people, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there's a few things that made me, raise my eyebrows.
Okay.
Pun intended. Okay. Number one, it was said that he was in the house for 15 minutes. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's possible with the K-bar, I guess. I've never owned a K-bar before. But I guess that's a possibility, right?
Yep.
But wait a second. When they said the number of stab wounds on these kids, like 50, 30, the math is not mathing. I'm like, how on earth could anyone have done? I mean, okay, let alone kill 4 people in 15 minutes, but do that many stab wounds? It just doesn't compute to me. It makes no sense.
I think it's totally plausible. Totally plausible.
Really?
Right? You walk in the house, right? You go in the door, the sliding door, right? You walk down the hall, your victim is asleep, right? You come up, you start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Maybe they scream, maybe they don't. Oh, the other one's over there. Go slash them a couple of times, right? Just go, 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 go. Oh, they're dead. Now we walk out. Oh, there's somebody else. Stab. Oh, one more guy. He's asleep. And he goes and, or stab him in the back, boom. I always think about this.
It seems like a short window, very short window.
It's not.
It really does.
20 minutes is an eternity. There was always the joke in the military, give me 15 minutes and a roll of duct tape and I could take over the world. Okay. That is an eternity. 6 days between a trial. That is an eternity. Okay. Now think about this. I think about this every morning. Think about this when you go, I don't know if you drink coffee in the morning. I don't drink coffee.
Of course.
But I always go downstairs and before I leave, I make a cup of coffee along with a protein shake. for her to take back upstairs before I leave in the morning. And it's amazing. I put the little Keurig thing in there. I got her this fancy freaking espresso thing. I mean, it makes chilled coffee. It makes 28 different coffees, 28 different ways. And she doesn't like it. I mean, she says she likes it, but what does she prefer? Her little Keurig, right? I'm like, I can make you the good stuff over here. I can make it 28 different ways. I can make it iced. I can make it hot. I can make it lukewarm. I could add foam and water to it, right? And she doesn't like it. So I go and I get the little thing and I put the Keurig in, boom, I close it. I hit the button. And I think it takes less than 2 minutes from the time you start it for it to make its cup of coffee, right? And some mornings I can, feed the dog, empty the dishwasher, give the dog its medicine before that gets done. And I'm not even trying hard. Okay? But think about it. So how long do you think it takes to walk from your kitchen or your back door to go walk to the bedrooms? 30 seconds, maybe? If you're walking a straight,
Yeah, probably less than that.
Less than that. And in this particular case, all your victims are asleep. It's not like you had to fight your way in there.
Well, Zana was awake.
Yeah, exactly. Zana Kernodle was awake. And guess what? He took her out too, right?
Yeah.
She fought gallantly, but the reality of it is he killed her too. And then went and killed Ethan Chapin.
Do you think he had to resharpen that knife? I mean, do you think he sharpened it in between?
No. My guess is he probably, there's speculation and I don't know. I would love to get it. If I had an extra 20 grand hanging around, I'd go get all the, reports. But my concern is they're going to be so redacted that, it's just going to be a waste of $20,000 to get all those reports. Right. But, I think people have said there's possibility he had 2 knives, and that's very plausible. I don't know, but I don't think he sharpened his knife in between. No, absolutely not. But he ordered a sharpener as well that they couldn't find either. My guess is he used it, and every indication would be that K-Bar was pretty darn sharp because knives are they're not a great weapon. In all reality, to stab people, because, yes, they're going to be sharp and they're going to puncture, but to go in, you got to go through all that goo called your organs, your lung, your heart, your stomach, all that stuff, the skin, to go in and out and in and out, right? And there's going to be blood flying everywhere, and as you're coming up, and it's going to be a bloody, bloody mess. And also, you can hit bone. And it can get stuck, or your hand cannot be gripping it hard enough, and it can slide down and possibly cut yourself on it.
But aren't you just reinforcing my point? That
No,
it's impossible.
I don't think it's impossible at all. No, I don't. He was in there for 20 minutes. That is an eternity. How long do you think it takes to stab somebody 52 times? I guess I could do it, simulated here. But you're on top of somebody that's
if I hadn't
asleep.
Heard about the number of stab wounds, I wouldn't have questioned this. But it does seem like a lot of stab emotions for that time frame. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, let's count it here. Okay. Remember, the victim is asleep, not fighting, not going to be resisting. So here we go. Frank, start your stopwatch. I'll wait till I get to the top. No, actually, I can start it here. Okay. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. How many seconds, Frank?
Okay, how long was that?
28 seconds. And I wasn't even angry.
You made your point.
I wasn't even angry. I wasn't even psyched up with all the adrenaline rushing through my body. And him getting off on his weird fetish, whatever he was doing there that night. You think he wasn't jacked up? Oh, yeah. 20 minutes. He stayed
Okay.
too long. But yeah,
Touche. Okay. Can I bring up two other points that bothered me? If
Sure.
that's okay.
sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think it was Olivia, Kaylee's sister, who gave that mic drop, crazy victim impact statement.
Yeah.
I think it was her who brought up the fact that there was another weapon, and she says, "Where's the other weapon?" And from the beginning, we were all led to believe there was one weapon, one perp, right? So I'm like, well, so why is there no other mention of another weapon? Why does it take for her to be in court to bring this up? It almost felt to me like they were trying to avoid muddying the waters. They wanted to focus only on the K-bar, but she was aware there was another weapon. Also, Steve Goncalves, he said with the injuries to his beautiful daughter, that her face was pummeled and they had marks of another type of weapon, which they described. They don't know what it was. I know Dylan saw something, and she said she was holding something that looked like a container or whatever. It had an arrow at it. There's something going on there. Another weapon. And why is this only coming out at the sentencing hearing? That I don't understand. Her teeth were broken.
Okay. But here we go. Did we lose you?
I'm still here.
Okay. I thought we lost you there for a second. Okay.
Yeah,
First of all, I think there was probably another weapon. Second of all, I thought I heard the interview or read an interview with the prosecutor who said, we think there may have been another weapon. But guess what? Look at the end of this K-bar. See that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that, right? That is pure steel. Okay. Now be careful. I'm going to hit the desk. Tell me what you think this probably did to somebody if you hit them hard. And I'm not even going to be hitting my desk that hard because people say, Scott, why didn't you warn me? It was so loud. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
What do you think that would do to somebody's face?
Do you say he turned it around? Is that something that someone would normally do with that type of weapon? I don't know. I've never had a K-bar knife before. Is that something that someone would do?
You could. Yeah. I mean, I know I was taught in the military. He was taught with, he was a jujitsu guy or something. And I'm sure there was some
boxing
or boxing. He did boxing. I mean, if you're going in to kill somebody, you're going to use whatever you have. And if, they wake up or they start resisting, maybe you fumble, right? You fumbled the knife sheath. Maybe things didn't go exactly. You dropped the knife, you picked it up. You think you got it the right way, but you start smashing their face. I'm just telling you, I don't know for sure. Just a possibility.
Well, it just felt like a sin of omission. Like they're purposely not saying that there may be another weapon. We only find out about this really at the sentencing.
But guess what?
Hearing.
Guess what?
Yeah.
So what? It would have come out on cross-examination. The real killer must have had multiple weapons. What does it matter? Somebody was stabbed.
I'm not a lawyer, but I assume that part of the strategy is to say one perpetrator, one weapon. It's cleaner. People can digest that easier rather than muddying the waters. I don't know if that's true. You're a lawyer. You tell me.
I don't believe
that's what I was thinking.
I don't believe the two intruder theory. I don't think that's something. No.
But do you think it's a better strategy to say one weapon, one perp rather than
I heard Russell say, or is it the prosecutor say, there may have been a second weapon. I don't know. They didn't find it. Guess what?
Yeah.
They didn't find the original weapon either.
Well, they're not going to find the K-bar either.
They didn't find the K-bar either. And the only reason they believe it was the K-bar was because he had purchased one. And guess what? When they searched his house, they just couldn't find one. So I think it's reasonably plausible to assume.
Like, K-bar?
and they went out, and bought a K-bar. And the coroner said, yes, that would be consistent with the injuries that were sustained there. So they didn't have the murder weapon. Okay, I'm satisfied with that because he had a murder weapon that could have been it. Be consistent with it. The pathologist isn't going to say it had to have been a K-bar, but that's circumstantial evidence. And don't say, oh, it's circumstantial. Doesn't care. The law views circumstantial and direct evidence the same. It's the weight that the jury gives it. Okay, there's a second weapon. They didn't find it. Okay, guess what? They can't say with certainty it was the K-bar that did it, But guess what? He bought a K-bar and a sharpener, and we can't find either one. But we did have his DNA on the sheath. I think it's reasonable to assume that he had one. And whether it was one or two, does that really matter? No. Does it matter that he stabbed her 52 times? Definitely for after deliberation, maybe for the death penalty. But it doesn't be like, well, they only maybe could have stabbed him 52 times. That's reasonable doubt. That's absurd.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So my last one, and I don't want to hog your show.
All right.
But everyone knows that Maddie. Well, everyone believes that Maddie was the intended target. You could, like, people said they could see her in the window. Like, I mean, unfortunately, it's a horrible thing. Okay. So everyone believes that she was like his fixation. That's who he was going after. Whether the other people were intended targets or they were just collateral damage, we can't know that. But people believe it was Maddie. So the question I have, which bugs me, like some of these other things, which is, they may not be loose ends, but they feel like they are, which is that the idea that the prosecutor said there was, it just seems so like out of turn. He said something like, we know there was no sexual assault. Well, how do we know that? Like, that wasn't his intent. This wasn't meant as a sexual assault. I'm like, well, she's a beautiful girl and he's a virgin or a very horny guy, supposedly an incel. So how could, and he had all these videos that he was watching of like tied up, passed out. So how can you make that leap that it wasn't sexual in nature? Like, to me, I'm like, that just kind of seemed like he threw that in there for good measure. And I'm like, I don't understand even why. Why is that to be believed by the public?
Well, if anything, that's exculpatory for a Kohberger, right? They could have gone in and said,
why would that be exculpatory?
Because it didn't happen, right? If they thought that they had evidence of a sexual assault, they would have charged that as well, right? I don't think Kohberger. I think Kohberger. I've never met the man, okay, but he just looks like one of those socially awkward guys, probably super smart, and they say he's on the autism scale. So I don't care. He's just one of those guys that is forever going to be awkward, confused, and the only time he's going to have a female will be one now while he's in custody and they're writing to him. I don't think he went in there to have sex with any one of those girls, let alone Madison Mogen. I think he went in there to kill her because of his sexual desires and whatever that he had. And that's why I think, well, frankly, why they were stabbed so many times. He was angry. That is personal. If I wanted to go in and kill somebody quickly with a knife, I wouldn't be stabbing them. I would be cutting their throat and they wouldn't know what the hell hit them. But that's personal when they start doing it that much. It's like when somebody strangles somebody. Sure, somebody could pass out when you strangle them for 30 seconds, but it takes a good couple of minutes to really kill them. That's personal. Stabbing somebody 52 times, that's pure anger. Prosecutors knew it. Defense knew it. Kohberger knew it. And that's why he took the deal. He's guilty as sin.
Well, I will say, Scott, first off, I really like your show a lot. I listen all the time. So thank you for that. You do really amazing content. I just want to say thank you. And number two, I will say that, I definitely had these questions in my mind and I felt like I could be swayed. I did watch these other channels just to see what they're saying. Like, are they raising any good points? I want to have a balanced view. Even if they sound crazy, I just want to think, well, what are they saying? Maybe they do have a point. I don't know. And then my mind gets all mixed up and I'm like, maybe I'm just confused. But I will say that when I watch your show, you're like the voice of reason and you kind of lay it out and you're like, are you kidding me? He pled guilty to life in prison. Why would anyone on earth do that? Like, what could they possibly be holding over his head or his family to get him to plea? It was the same thing with Watts. So like, no, you've got it wrong. It's like, no, of course not. But like, it's easy to be lured into these sort of crazy ideas and conspiracies and Kohbergers and whatever. And, if they have a good point and they can really demonstrate that they have, the goods, the receipts, and, they should knock on the prosecutor's door or do something and say, hey, we can show you. And this is the whole point of this episode, that they don't have that.
Yep.
There's no there.
And that was kind of
So,
like in the
thank you
Watts
for-
case. You know, the
Yeah.
people in the Watts case, there was a guy, I can't remember. I don't even know if he's around anymore. It doesn't even matter. But he would come up with these crazy and bizarre theories. And I'm like, dude, like, you can't ignore the facts, right? They were releasing, you know, the interviews, his confessions, the tapes, etc. And we're getting all this stuff. And this guy's like, oh, it's obvious that there's, you know, altered this and that. And look at the shadow here. And look at that. And I'm like, well, if you had cracked this case, by God,
I never
you
saw that
should
shadow.
go directly to the defense counsel, get yourself qualified as an expert witness in shadow and all this photography stuff, or maybe you enhanced it yourself, right? And go to the police as well with this exculpatory information, because don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of the police, right? I respect them, but there's a lot of great police officers and detectives, and I've dealt with a lot of them, and I'm friendly when I see them, and they all know he's got a job to do. I've got a job to do. And, you know, during the intermission, so to speak, we chat. How are things going, man? They're good. I thought you were going to retire. I thought you were doing this, but you're still doing this. You've been in homicide for 23 years. My God, aren't you tired? I'm exhausted, right? And so, you know, everybody's got a job to do, but you can't ignore reality. That's what I keep saying. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you believe. It only matters what you can prove. And if these people, and don't get me wrong, maybe they have something. And that's why I opened up the lines tonight. And yes, you have called in, but you said, hey, I think he's guilty, but I have these questions. All right, let's talk about them, because those are the questions that people have been raising. It's just like you and Ian, the previous caller. Okay, fine. But I think, you know, and you may not think that I persuaded you very much, but the reality of it is I think any question you had, we answered. I think so, at least hopefully to your 100%. Satisfaction. You know, and listen, could I come up with the most outlandish stuff to, you know, get views on the internet? Oh, I'm sure I could, right? And say, you got to believe me. Look at my crazy, you know, situation. And trust me, I'm a lawyer. I do this for a living, blah, blah, blah. I still got to look myself in the mirror. I got to have integrity. And, you know, I got to go out, not just in the world of the internet, but, you know, my clients, I got to be able to look at them as well. And I don't want them to think that I'm some wackadoo nut job out there. I mean, I have a business to run, and, you know, I'm not going to come up with some crazy theory just to get clicks on social media. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And I have no reason to lie.
I'm very interested to see someone who is willing to really put themselves out there in a serious way and say, here's why I think everyone has got it wrong. And they're not doing it because they're trying to get likes and clicks. Like, they genuinely believe that. And I just think
they would.
Like,
and here's the thing.
A very low percentage of people.
Usually on the weekends, I go through and I try to see what some of these other channels are doing. And I can't watch some of the stuff. It's just ridiculous. It is just ridiculous. And it's like, hey, okay, but I looked, you know, maybe they're right and I'm wrong. Convince me otherwise, right? Just like tonight. But I don't think you're going to do it. I don't think you're going to do it. So thank you for the call.
Well, maybe it's fun to speculate. Yeah. Thank you so much, Scott. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. You say we have one more call, Frank?
Yeah, one.
All right. 4? All right, let's do this. All right, better be a pro Kohberger person here. Hello. Who do we got?
Dave.
Dave, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, it's Scott, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Scott. I wish I could see the video of your face at the same time that I can, you know, talk to you and stuff like that. But
well, I think there's a little bit of a delay, but not much. You're on live.
Okay. So I'm not sure how open we want to be with it, but I do want to say that I'm in North Idaho. I'm local to the 3 girls that are all victims of this crime. I'm in a, like, triangulation wise, like I'm right in the middle of it.
and I'm very familiar with Moscow. My family is from there, and my dad is a Kohberger. And it's been an interesting thing. It's what, as my dad's gotten older, it's what we, really kind of talk about and things like that.
Okay.
And he has, he's had a lot of questions and stuff. And some of these have kind of developed where, I question it as well.
Okay. Well, go. What is your big question? What is the in your father? What do you guys have doubts about?
Yeah, I don't know. Are we naming like other channels that are on here, or do we not want to give those guys credit? Because I don't necessarily want to, but maybe for reference, it would be correct.
Well, it's your call.
Okay, so these nutbags out there. I don't know. Maybe they do have some credit that needs to be done, but like Pavarotti, Jay Embry, there's an idea or a theory that these are actually like drug running prison gangs. And I also want to preface that I'm proud of my area, and I don't think that we have any of those types of supremacy activities that are in our area.
Yeah, but okay. So let's just take that first of all. All these other channels with these theories, oh, it's drug related, this and that and everything else, right? Prove it with legal and competent evidence, right? And if you look at Madison Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Zana Kernodle, right? What two of the three were blondes, weren't they? If they're a bunch of white supremacist racists, wouldn't they be the last people they're going to kill? Somebody with Sydney Sweeney type genes, so to speak. I mean, that makes I just, like I said, when people say that, prove it. And oh yeah, by the way, prove it when the guy that was accused of it, whose DNA just happened to be there, not some other, drug dealer, was there. What evidence do they have? They got zilch, zero, nada, none.
Yeah, I understand. That's kind of where it gets a little bit underhanded with it. But if you would look back to a couple of videos back, and I watched this. I envelope my break times, my lunch hours. I'll throw in an AirPod, and I listen to this when I turn on my electric toothbrush in the morning, and I'm looking for these updates on stuff because this is where I live.
Sure.
This is literally where I live. And Moscow is where I grew up. I drove grain truck for my grandpa when I was 14 years old on the Palouse.
Nice.
It's literally where I live. This just envelopes me fully. And for my dad, he's the last person I would ever think to be, wrapped up into conspiracies and stuff. But with my dad's wise age and experience, I have to, kind of entertain all of these ideas. But here's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky is that, so Jay Embry released a video a few weeks ago, I think. You'd have to dig. I wish that I could document this. I was listening to you on hold. Otherwise, I would have, asked you to reference a video. But he overlaid all of the timestamps of the car that's driving through the neighborhood and things like that. And he apparently overlaid it with the police interactions and things like that. And he was able to identify the car as not a white Hyundai, but an undercover, I think, police car that is a tan Ford Fusion, which is extremely similar. And then if you overlay that with a timestamp, everything, all of the surveillance overlays, and it looks like the police cameras are offset by 1 hour, like they did not adjust to daylight savings time. And then this is where my mind really starts to stir, where it's like, hey, that seems like a red flag. Why hasn't that been done? And it seems like a simple thing to resolve.
Well, let me ask you this. Did this Jay guy, did he take his evidence to the police department in Moscow? Did he Moscow? Did he go to the FBI and say, I have cracked this case. You have the wrong guy. It wasn't a white Elantra. And that car was actually an undercover police officer's car. Now, remember, the police have an obligation to turn over, as do the prosecutors, exculpatory evidence that would reduce the potential exposure of any defendant. They have to turn it over. So you would think they would do that. Next question to think about is, my God, did he go to the defense and say, my God, I can prove that your client wasn't the guy? My guess is he didn't. My guess is he did not.
I think that this is just, no, you're absolutely correct. But I think that this is from the release of the batch dump that was done recently. And this guy that's just got a YouTube channel and he's doing a private investigation.
Sure.
But so many other people that are out there, listen, I'm in North Idaho. So when I'm listening to somebody that has a strong English accent, or this guy that is from Boston or something, or I can pick up on your Colorado accent, and particularly if anybody says Moscow rather than Moscow, or whatever our language is, then I just feel like I'm local. I am tangled up in this mess.
Sure. But here's the thing. Guess what? A couple people knew what really happened. One, Brian Kohberger. Two, his attorneys. Because remember, at one point, Ann Taylor said, Your Honor, our client is legally and factually innocent. And she's doing her lawyer stuff. I get it, right? That was when she was trying to get the change of venue. Well, guess what? Lawyers aren't going to have their client plead guilty if they think they're factually innocent of the case. Now, ultimately, it's the client's decision, but they're going to recommend that you not plead guilty to something you didn't do, particularly for murders where you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Okay. And even if this guy said, oh my God, I've got the smoking holy grail to save Brian Kohberger. So it wasn't the car, it was a cop car. Ann Taylor had significant resources, not only by attorneys and investigators. Don't you think that since they've had all this video for the last 2.5 years, that somebody would have looked at that and looked at every inch of that video over and over and over and over again, since it was one of the key pieces of evidence against their client? Don't you think they would have looked at everything surrounding that, hired experts, brainstormed, asked other attorneys, what about this? What about that? Of course they did. Okay. I would take somebody's manipulation of video these days with a huge grain of salt, right? I can call Frank and say, hey, Frank, do a video about the Kohbergers saying he's innocent and him saying he did it. And literally within, I don't know, what'd you take, if 10 minutes, Frank? The 10 minutes. He had that video up yesterday. Okay.
Yeah.
So unless you've got me the original and we can lay the appropriate foundation and it hasn't been altered, then come talk to me. In today's world, you're gonna have to prove that that's original unaltered video. And even if he manipulated it, I mean, we can do this stuff that Frank can do. It's amazing. Okay. Any experienced person with those editing skills, anything they can do, it's absolutely amazing. But, if this guy solved the case, by God, go to there, present it to the district attorney. I'm sure the district attorney, if they believe it so overwhelmingly, will file a motion to dismiss the case against Brian Kohberger because they don't want an innocent man to be convicted. But guess what? That's not going to happen.
Yeah. I don't think so either. I mean, myself, I really want him to be guilty. I really like that it's been solved. I really feel like it's over. And man, my heart just hurts for everybody, that was involved with that.
Yeah.
But there's this lingering thing that's in the back of my head. I've served on a jury before, and I was the 13th juror, and I know where I would have been. I got followed up with my kid's principal at the school, and he knew how invested I was. He called me, gave me a follow up, and then I would have agreed with the jury, I think, and then now this guy was in prison for a crime that he was found innocent in and had appealed, and it's like 3 years later, and I'm just skeptical of the process myself at this point.
Hey,
and
and I get it. I mean, I'm a defense attorney, for God's sake, and I'm gonna go do a homicide next week as well. I don't know how it's gonna go. It's a question of fact for the jury to decide, and I want that jury to be skeptical. I'm skeptical. I mean, I'm skeptical of anything the government does. I really am. But you can't ignore, simply can't ignore facts. You can't ignore overwhelming facts. And, have innocent people been convicted? Yes. Have I had clients that have got their case reversed on appeal? Yes. It's one of those cases where, I just kept saying, nope, in appeal. One was the judge was like, I don't care. The witness is dead. We're going to have somebody testify as to what they said. I'm like, Judge, there's case law that says you can't do that. Well, guess we'll find out in a couple of years. Yep. After my client went to jail for a couple of years, and it got reversed, and then they didn't refile, and then they just dismissed it. And I said, oh no, I want to come into court and have the court dismiss the case on the record. And they ignored me. So yeah. It's like, it's not fair. It's not fair. All right.
No, it's not.
I don't trust the government. I take it with a grain of salt, but I also can't. I would do my clients no good in real world if I ignored the facts. And you can't do that.
Right.
You can't, even if you're just following a case, you can't ignore the facts. You can't.
But in the facts in this case, do you feel that touch DNA is really the overwhelming fact in this case?
It proves identity. Yes. I have said, I would literally was like, DNA. All right, we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at that. When they said they had, conclusive, it matched him unequivocally. They had no challenges to it. You can go back and look. I said it was over. The general public accepts DNA evidence. DNA has been around in court for 30 years.
Yes, that's
I remember when I was on active duty, we had a horrible male on male rape case, and they were using DNA, and we did all the challenges to it because it was, new, and, we had hearings and blah, blah, blah. And the court said it's coming in. And then now it's just been so generally widely accepted. They see it on TV. Oh, DNA's there. How'd it get there? Woo, right? So it's I said DNA.
Yeah.
They got to prove identity. Would have been difficult to prove this case without the DNA? Absolutely. And guess what?
Yeah.
If the defense thought they had a viable way to explain why his DNA got on that knife sheath, they would have come up with it. And they didn't. They had no good explanation, which means he was there.
So I want to be on the same page with you, but so I've given this a lot of thought, and maybe you know the answer. Has there been anything that's released on footprints, specifically bloody footprints? We kind of have an idea on how, Brian BK moved from one room to another in that order, but I think that this could simply be put to bed if we can just say, or somebody can just say and release that, hey, there's one set of footprints that's in this house. Done deal.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think the downstairs, we saw photos of, we put it up 2 weeks ago, maybe, or something. It was the house it was on, still had the house that was listed when it was on Zillow, I think, or for rental or something like that. And I think the downstairs had hardwood, and I thought the upstairs had carpet. But, they said that, what they anticipate was that the guy had planned for it, that he had, wear some sort of protective clothing. That's why they were going with his, master's thesis paper or paper that he had to do, that he would have known how to do that, wear the appropriate little booties and, the little biohazard suit, all that kind of stuff. So that doesn't convince me either way. I think the DNA, it's one thing that it was on the knife sheath. The fact that it was underneath the victim and you have no explanation how your DNA got there and you bought the knife, you got some explaining to do. And I understand the burden's never on the defense to prove their innocence, but when you got that kind of evidence there, the jury's going to be looking at, well, how'd your DNA get there? Were you somehow framed by the real killer? Really? Who did it then?
Well,
or just the odds that
I think
your
that
DNA just happened to drop at 1122 King Road on November 13th of 2022, and you are the most unluckiest man in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the conspiracy really from what I'm getting in my local area is that it is probably like some kind of a white supremacist prison group that are drug runners through this area, and they run drugs from Eugene, Oregon to Seattle, through Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, south through Moscow, and they're hitting all these areas, even down to Utah.
Okay.
And
okay. I've represented a few drug dealers in my day. I've represented several high-level drug dealers in my day. My experience is they don't go around killing college students. They like to keep it on the lowdown and not draw attention to themselves. And then I would say, okay, then which drug people did it, right? And why did they just happen to have Brian Kohberger's DNA there? What are the odds? So once again, great theory. I could say it was Mexican cartels and this is the drug debt and, innocent people, got in the way, right? What evidence do I have to prove that other than I just made it up? None.
Well, yeah, no, I agree. I want it to be that way,
well, that is the way.
But
there is no credible evidence. There is no credible evidence that it was white supremacist, gun-running killers that killed these people. Not a single iota of credible evidence. Like,
I want it to be that way.
Give me one name. Give me the name of the group that supposedly did it. Do you really think in this particular case that if the evidence led to a group of biker gang people running drugs between there and Oregon, that the police would ignore that? And I'm not a big fan of the police, but let's get real. Do you really think that would happen in today's world with today's information out there? Well, listen, I would tell you to tell the people that are espousing those theories, go seek professional help. Okay. And when you get that professional help, okay, they'll come to the conclusion that there is not a scintilla, the smallest amount of evidence to even articulate that. I felt silly even repeating it. There's no evidence of it. And if you think that there was just a scintilla of evidence, right? Don't you think the defense would have argued that alternate suspect, or somehow the defense was too afraid of the drug kingpins? Of course not. Their duty is to their client. Don't you think if Brian would say, I didn't do it, and there's all this evidence of these drug runners that did it. They did it. I'm innocent. Let's go to trial. Don't you think they would have brought that up? It wasn't in a single
I'm with you
thing.
on that.
I know. I'm just saying. But for the people out there that believe that garbage, seek professional help. Seriously. And don't get me wrong. I love a good conspiracy, right? I really do.
Me too.
I do.
Listen, I am wrapped up in this thing, and I love being able to talk to somebody that's educated rather than somebody that is just weird. I appreciate you, Scott.
All right. All right. Great call. I got a couple more calls before we go, and hopefully one of them is a true Kohberger. We have not had a single one. We've had a lot of people explaining their arguments and other people's, but they're not saying, I believe he's innocent. I want that collar. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks, Dave. All right. Rachel. Rachel, are you there?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Rachel, how are you? Are you a Kohberger?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? No, I'm not. I just wanted your opinion on kind of the theory that's out there.
Okay. Go ahead. Give me your best
there's
shot.
There's this channel called Gray Hughes Investigates. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it. He's kind of really invested in this case. He has like a really detailed timeline of like everything that's been released since this case like happened. And the other day he like kind of came up with this theory that if Kohberger's DNA wasn't left on the sheath, that would have been like his calling card, because he like looked up to like, you know, like serial killers that had all these different calling cards in the past, and that like the sheath was going to be like his way of like marking like his kills, and that he like messed up by not cleaning the, you know, knife fully and just leaving a little piece of DNA on it.
Well, I think he definitely
know like what your opinion.
Well, yeah, I think that Brian Kohberger absolutely screwed up. He left his trace behind, his evidence there behind, with his DNA on the knife sheath. My advice would be to block that channel and never watch them again, because whatever time you spent listening to that channel, guess what? You never are going to get your time in your life back from that. That is wasted time.
Right.
It's not, it wasn't a calling card. It was a screw up. Mystery solved. All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night. Who do we got, Frank?
Brandon.
Brandon. Are you there? Talk to me.
Hey, Scott?
Yes.
Yes, sir. No, I'm just a truck driver. Sorry for putting me up on the freeway there in Denver.
Never just say a truck driver. You deliver important stuff all over the world. There's never just, I'm never just a blank, or I'm never just a, no. Everything everybody does is important.
I actually run the trucking company, but I did want to say thank you for your service. Very important.
Well, thank you. I
listened to your podcast, if you call it that, while I drive down the road. And I guess what struck me right off the bat was, you know, how did such a skinny, homely looking guy, you know, mustered up the strength to, I guess, murder 4 people without a sound, right? I guess that's like the common sense, like.
Well, he didn't do it without a sound because the roommates heard something going on and they got nervous and they got scared. And he's a skinny little guy, but you know, if you saw his picture from high school, he was a little overweight. Hey, we've all been a little chubby, right? So I'm not calling him fat or anything, but he was a little chubby. And, but you know, he got into physical fitness, he got into health, etc. But here's the most important thing. 3 of his 4 victims were asleep when he attacked him. That's pretty cowardly.
You know, and that's kind of where I concluded with it is, he really was that guy. You know, he went in, they were sleeping, they had a good night, and he thought it, you know, his agenda was more important than their lives. And, you know, I'm sorry you have to battle these, you know, armchair heroes. But, you know, we listen to you, man. And it's nice that somebody that cares about the Constitution is out there, you know, putting good content out, clean content. I just wanted to say thanks. And I was confused at first about this whole, I was like, how did one little guy go in and just, slaughter 4 people? And after, as more facts come out, it does make more sense. If I lived in a small town like Oskau or whatever, however you pronounce it, I would want some sort of theater, some sort of drama. And, I understand those people, they live day to day, they see the same thing every day. And this was like, some sort of a weird theater for them. And I know that they don't want that. It's just, it's sad. And I hope that everybody can just get some closure.
Yep. I agree. Well, thank you for all that you do. Thanks for watching. And yeah, I mean, Brian Kohberger, he was a coward. He went in at night, surprise attack. 3 of the 4 people were asleep, never really stood a chance. So it's possible. And he was in that house for 20 minutes. That's an eternity. I don't think it took 20 minutes to do all that. And he was lurking around doing something else weird or whatever. I don't know. But I could walk around my house multiple times in 20 minutes. Doesn't take me that long.
Yeah, you're right about that. Well,
So.
take care, man.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks for the call. Great call. No, that was it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the show. My gosh, we went over 2 hours. Did that just fly by? It flew by, didn't it, Frank? That was fun. Didn't really get to the comments. And guess what? We put it out there for 2 hours. I begged people to call in and say, I believe Brian Kohberger is guilty. Didn't get it, but we still had some great calls where people said, hey, this is what I'm talking to. My dad believes this. This is what the other channels are saying. Okay. I think we knocked all those crazy theories down. But I appreciate everybody calling in. I appreciate everybody being a part of the show. Sorry we didn't get to a lot of the comments, but thanks for being here. So remember, if you haven't done so already, subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave a comment, and remember, hit that little bell for notifications, and you can always check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. I will have Frank put this up on the podcast for tomorrow as well. Hopefully it gets lots of listens to and downloads as well. All right. That's all we have for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.